Hello, and welcome back to our series on faith inspired leadership and property management. I'm your host for this series, Melissa D. White, and I am so honored that I've had incredible conversations with leaders, not just in the multifamily industry, but leaders across industries. We've met some of the most dynamic thought leaders in higher education, corporate spaces, in the community. And we've talked about the collaboration of our work over the last 18 months to produce and present to you all the launch of our inaugural group of the Faith Inspired Leadership and Property Management course. So, if you haven't noticed, each conversation has a particular theme as we have met our task force members and talked about the partnerships, the collaboration, the faith required to do this work. And today we lean deeper into the curriculum and the education. And I take this one personally as a teacher and a trainer in our industry. We know that training is how we equip and deploy our people to serve the people who we're responsible for. Training is the bedrock of how we show up, and it is a large part of how we operate our businesses. So I'm going to set the stage for this conversation today. Let's talk about the facts. The fact is this: research shows that every dollar that your team is investing in leadership development yields an average ROI of $7. So that means it reproduces and yields results when effectively applied. These programs still are missing one component. You know what that is? A faith driven element. Regardless of what you believe, incorporating a centralized theme of values, faith centric, and connecting your career and your calling through a lens of leadership development helps to deepen the curriculum and helps leadership development take root in how you grow. I can't think of a better group of leaders to have this conversation with than today's conversation with, again, my friend Stephanie Puryear Helling, who has led this charge, and task force member who has contributed to our curriculum, and industry giant, Teresa DeVos. I'm so honored to have the conversation with you today. Let me tell you more about Teresa and her accomplishments in our industry. Multifaceted, results driven, a true real estate professional, and it's evident of her love for the industry when you hear from her today. With more than 25 years of experience in multifamily property operations, asset and portfolio management, client services, and strategic business planning. She's a strong leader, a compassionate one too at that, with the ability to assist clients, investors, and operators in developing and executing property investment initiatives. She's a culture ambassador, a mentor, and a coach. Teresa, we are so honored to have you in today's conversation. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for being a member of this task force. You have truly stood by your yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. So glad to be here today, Melissa.
Absolutely. And again, I present to you our task force leader, industry subject matter expert, the shrink proof leadership coach, a Maxwell Leadership Executive Program Director, keynote speaker, and a faculty, my friend in this work, Stephanie Puryear Helling. Hi, Stephanie. Good morning.
Good morning, Melissa. Thanks for having me back. And Teresa, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolutely. Well, listen, when we look at all the components of what it takes to write a course, I think one of the most critical pieces is not just ideation, but it's executing the content of what it is we say we want to teach. And that's a tall order, right? I think back to a year and a half ago when we gave Stephanie our yes. Teresa, I'll just start with this. Did you realize just how big of a task this would be when you said yes to the task force?
Thank you, Melissa and Stephanie. It's good to see you again today, too.
You
Um,
too.
I'll tell you, I wasn't sure what I was entering, but
Right.
I knew it was God putting an opportunity in front of me at a time in my life. I was in a transitional season of life. And I was looking to find more work that I could do that was of significance, where we could make an impact in our industry. And so the opportunity to join fellow industry leaders in this effort, which align with my passion, I mean, it was an immediate yes. And once Stephanie and I had our first conversation and I understood where she was leading us and what we were working to accomplish together, I just knew that to have the opportunity to combine my faith with my industry experience, this is where I needed to be. It helps when you're a growth minded leader, right? And you want to be able to marry your passion with your expertise. So I'm happy to be here.
I love that. I love how you phrase that, marrying your passion with your expertise. And I can truly say all of our task force members have done that well. But
Mhm.
your role, tell us more about the specific role you took on in curriculum development, how you were able to bridge in your industry operational knowledge,
Mhm.
but also now your faith, your personal faith and convictions with some biblical principles. How do you even begin to tackle something like that?
First of all, you give thanks, right? And you realize that it is an opportunity. And I say, for me, I'll tell you, it was a growth opportunity because, yes, I've been in this industry like you described, right? I love the business of what we do. I love driving the performance of the investments. I love being an expert operator in our space. Um, but to be able to see an opportunity to work with learning and development strategists and professionals was, I mean, almost overwhelming. That is not my background, right? So I went into this knowing that I had an opportunity to partner and collaborate with those experts to bring knowledge, right? But it's faith inspired knowledge. And
Yeah.
that really was a blessing. I mean, when you see these opportunities and you want to step forward, it takes a little courage. It took it from me for sure because it was outside of my area of expertise. I had to adapt, as Stephanie might say, because learning to work with curriculum specialists and universities is very different than being the decider sometimes, right?
Mhm.
Um, so it was just a wonderful journey and a wonderful experience. And it took us back. I think one of our goals was to help create a curriculum that produced stewardship in leaders, right? Servant leadership. And it really helped me remember that part about myself as well.
I love that. That's a perfect segue to my next question to you. I want to talk about faith and leadership from a personal lens for a moment. I know we see your bio and know the incredible depth of work, but talk about how your personal faith journey has shaped how you approach leadership in your own work, in your daily life. How does
Yeah.
that impact you, your personal faith journey as a believer?
I will say for me, fortunately, I had a Christian foundation in my life most of my life, right? So I was very fortunate to know that Christ calls us to love our neighbors, right? And though our people that we work with, right, are our neighbors. The residents that live in our communities are our neighbors, right? And so I knew that. I had been taught that early on. So a lot of my decisions in my career were shaped by my faith, I will say. And in many, many instances, very early on, I remembered praying for discernment, praying for wisdom. But for me, what took me from kind of knowing that's what I should do to growing into it and actually bringing it forth was I was fortunate enough to have a mentor very early on in my career. And that mentor, we had the same value system. He provided me with resources and reading materials, many of them from John Maxwell, whom we talk about in our curriculum, right? But he helped me put that into practice. He modeled it. And so for us to be able to take this out now and help model and teach others and lead them into faith inspired decision making is a blessing to bring that back around.
I love that you mentioned specifically your mentor, and that was a part of our conversation as well. We hear the word mentorship thrown around a lot in
Yeah.
career development and leadership development. And what excites me about the program is a deeper calling beyond mentorship to discipleship, right? So just listening to how you said your mentor essentially discipled you in your faith and how to walk that out, but in the occupation of your work and even giving you tools and materials. And I love that. And I know Stephanie's a big fan of that too with the Maxwell materials. And it's just a perfect alignment to the curriculum itself. So I know Stephanie's answer to this because we talked about it the other day, but I want to hear your take, Teresa, about career as a calling. We've talked
Mm.
about that with all of our leaders. When I say career as a calling, what does that mean to you exactly?
For me, I think that it's kind of segues from what I just shared, right? It's the
Mhm.
ability to apply my faith-based values in my everyday interactions, right? It's taking work and a job,
Mhm.
building a career where people are first, and being able to truly bring the faith-based values that we talk about within the curriculum, right, into decision making, into people interactions, into working with others. And I truly believe that how we show up and how we model ourselves helps us influence others.
Mm. That is true evangelism. How do we show up first, right? Do we show up in excellence? Do we show up in a way that represents Christ well to our team through our actions before our words? Stephanie, I want you to kind of set the stage for this next question. I want to hear from you first. The design process. Teresa already talked about just the thought process of, oh, how do I take this on from a different lens, not just operationally in our industry, but now incorporating a curriculum design team and higher education. Tell us more. Let us behind the scenes a little bit, Stephanie. What was it like to even go from ideation to outlining and formatting and even the partnership? Because it is a different function to create a course at a university level curriculum with the rigor and the right pacing, even the system side of it. Can you tell us about
Mhm.
how that came together, that framework?
Sure. So, we had an opportunity to talk to Dave Snyder and John Cadis, the Dean of Grand Canyon University, last week. And we, meaning Community Growth Foundation, had actually been discussing this vision with Grand Canyon for quite some time. And so by the time I started reaching out to the task force, we had begun an agreement with Grand Canyon University on what that process would entail, both from the responsibilities of the Community Growth Foundation side, the responsibilities of the Grand Canyon University side, including their curriculum design team. Um, and then, on the Community Growth Foundation side, we worked on putting together a charter that would identify, really our charge and the strategy behind this, right? What is it that we're developing? Why are we developing it? Who will be involved? At what degree? Etc. And so I identified people like Teresa, yourself, Melissa, and the rest of the task force to really build a cross-functional task force, including both operators and educators from the multifamily space at various levels. So as you know, we've got CEOs of companies, both on the owner operator side as well as the supplier partner side for the industry. We've got operators, people at the asset manager level, executive like Teresa, and then we've got multifamily educators. So it was really intentional to have all of those different lenses as we developed our curriculum. So one of the first things that we did after we solidified our task force and had a kickoff call to explain the what, the why, etc., we began discussing what our framework needed to look like and why and how this is different and should be different than what exists already in the industry, right? So there are several designation programs that industry professionals can take and complete and earn both from the National Apartment Association Education Institute and their credentialing programs, which are now called certificate programs, to the Institute of Real Estate Management and their credentialing or designation programs, all solid, well-known, well-respected, and in some cases accredited. However, if you look at what's included in those credentialing programs, a large portion of the purpose and the content is focused on how to be an expert in your field, right?
Mhm.
What do you need to know? What do you need to be able to do? So it's heavily focused on skills and knowledge specific to the multifamily or property management industry, as it should be, right? As you would expect. And so when we aligned ourselves with the vision of Community Growth Foundation to create a faith-based curriculum for multifamily, we talked through that. And the biggest question was, how is this different from what already exists? And how should this be different? What is the gap that we are trying to fill? And that's where we came up with our framework and the buckets, if you will, that we ended up designing our 8 modules and our curriculum around.
Thank you for setting the stage for that. That even helped me better understand some of the conversations. One around aligning with Community Growth Foundation, which to our audience, if you're not familiar, all of this came about through the vision of David Snyder, who was in our last interview, and the Community Growth Foundation. So first there had to be alignment. And I'm glad you pointed that out of yes, there was a vision, but who were the right people to assemble, and also next identifying the gaps. That's huge because there's definitely not a lack of training, but it's the delivery and the modality of the training and even the lens or the faith perspective is a huge differentiator. Even the materials, the curriculum, and the thought process behind how it's structured lends a great platform to do it. So thank you for that, Stephanie.
Sure.
So
I do
now
want
that,
to add,
please.
just to reiterate, our goal was never to try to replicate or replace what already exists, because as I mentioned, all of those programs are solid. I've been involved actually on the curriculum design side in some of those
Same.
programs for EI, and I've been involved in the designing test questions and working with the psychometricians, and the process that EI follows is solid, right? So the intent was never to replace that, replicate that, or in any way, shape, compete with it, because those programs are essential, they are needed, they are high value, but to really complement, if you will, what exists. And so to align with Dave's vision, because he is the founder of Community Growth Foundation, which is to create faith-based curriculum, but then because many of us are involved in EI, we want to complement what exists. So for people who have achieved their CALP, Certified Apartment Leasing Professional, or Certified Apartment Manager, CAM, or Certified Apartment Property Supervisor, or even CAMT, Certified Apartment Maintenance Technician, what's next, right? Well, this is sort of a natural what's next to that. Now, do you have to have those designations in order to apply to this? No, you don't, because this could be your first step, and then you might decide to go on and get your certificate as a certified apartment manager. Or again, with IRM, you may decide that your next step is CPM or your ARM. And so it's complementary, right? And one does not have to come before the other, is another point that I want to make, because I know that question will be asked. I've already had a few people say, hey, do I have to do this first? No, you do not, because it's complementary. It's not, neither are a prerequisite, which I think is huge and beneficial. So we basically meet you where you are.
Thank you for highlighting that. And
You
that
bet.
does address maybe questions or concerns when people are looking for continued education, leadership development experiences. There are options out there. And you're right. It is a perfect complement, actually, when you look at the curriculum. One, they're synonymous. And like you said, we looked at what maybe some of the gaps are. It's not that it was lacking, it was how to enhance the experience or the education. And the faith inspire portion is an enhancement too, to deepen our connection to the material through a faith lens. So that is a perfect
Yes.
way to put that. Thank you, Stephanie, for
Thank you.
emphasizing that. Absolutely. So, Teresa, now that we have talked more about the foundation of the curriculum piece, let's talk about from your perspective as an operator in the industry. You have set in a unique position that for those that are participating in this pilot group or future participants of the class
Mhm.
will have to have the conversations in the organizations when they select training, right? Is this the right fit? Does this give the right amount of rigor? Why would an operator, owner, a leader invest in their team participating? Can you speak to that perspective as an operator in the industry and executive leader?
Oh, I'd be happy to, and I'd love to. And if we start to run out of time, you can stop me because this is
You're
where like my
good.
passion just
I know
jumps
this
right
is
there.
your zone.
This is my
Yeah.
zone. That's right. But I think what Stephanie just explained to us, like there's a lot of material that brings so much value to teaching the skills that are required in our industry. And what this program does, in my view, is it reinforces that, right? But it also then helps reinforce our core values and disciplines that we look to from our leaders in our industry and our decision makers, right? I mentioned earlier having a growth minded or growth oriented mindset, passion driven engagement, service. These are all things, that we look to. So I say this because I speak to my fellow executives, the decision makers who might be deciding to help support and encourage enrollment in the curriculum. It matters because our people are the most critical element of true and successful execution of the strategies that we put forth in an organization, right? So, teaching them and providing them tools that incorporate biblical wisdom into their everyday will only help elevate work beyond transactions, right? Beyond the tactical to something that's much more purposeful. We've
Mhm.
seen this in the industry when given the opportunity. And as I mentioned earlier, fortunately I was blessed with a mentor who later became my business partner for many years. And so to be able for the tools that he gave me, we want to be able to take those out to the others. And what I will say to the decision makers in these organizations is your leaders within your organizations will be faced, not maybe, they will be faced with decisions. And those decisions are going to require them to balance the financial resources that they're entrusted with, the people resources of the organization, the residents in our communities, and we're looking to them to represent ownership ethically, right? Um, there are stewards, and there will be a time that they must balance this decision making, and there's going to be tension in that decision making. And I'm a firm believer that if we can give them the skills and the knowledge on how to manage conflict with faith inspired wisdom, right? How to be a servant leader when they're working with residents at a community, or how to approach decision making with matters that they're entrusted with honesty, ethics, and integrity, then there is no doubt that this is going to positively influence the bottom line.
Mhm. I think that's a perfect place to give them a preview of what this course looks like because you began to walk us a bit through our
Mhm.
8 modules. And this is the part when you can really see the alignment or the synergy, if you will, of how the different modules connect to what you were talking
Mhm.
about through that ethical lens and the stewardship lens. So let me just share here a little bit of that. Let's see. There we go. Okay. All right, so you all should be able to see my screen here. And I wanted to specifically highlight you can go to communitygrowthfoundation.org/education. I'll drop that in the chat for you. We are still taking applications. You heard Teresa's case to executives, to owners, operators, supplier partners. Um, Invest in your people, but you're not just investing in their education, you're investing in shared value systems. Like, regardless of your faith belief, this is just good business to support them in a place of belonging, to learn from a faith lens. So, just really quickly, if you go to communitygrowthfoundation.org/education. That should have popped up in the comment section, whatever platform that you're on. So just briefly, ladies, if we can share with them these modules, and even if you have insights or want to just give them not too much, just a tidbit of like what you incorporated, maybe from a theological or Bible-based lens. I'm very curious about how we made that connection as well to the leadership piece, or even the thought process and some of the learning and development. So the first module is leading from character. Right out of the gate, I love that we're tackling character first. That's such a blend for me, even as a professor of communications. The first thing we deal with in business leadership and communications is character, the credibility, and then now enhancing, or as Stephanie put it, just in addition to the leadership training, having a Christ-centered lens of what leadership looks like through residential property management and the character building piece. One thing I can personally attribute and say to this, we have some exceptional talent in our industry. But can I tell you, there comes a crossroads of belief when your talent is not enough. We have to have more thoughtful conversations around character, credibility, and now elevating that conversation to a Christ-centered approach. The second module, seeing the person, not just the resident. Teresa, can you touch on that? Because that is such an operational lens of knowing, hey, wait a minute. Yes, we steward the asset, but we can't mismanage the people while managing the property. Can you talk a little bit about module 2 and just the perspective there?
Absolutely. And then I would also welcome Stephanie, please
Yeah.
add anything that I may have overlooked. But
Mhm.
as you said, I mean, and as we've talked about, right, it's about the people. So learning to lead, especially with compassion, because
Yes.
imagine if everybody working at the communities, everybody supporting that effort, right, knew how to lead with compassion, we would be kind, we'd be able to understand, we would communicate better, we would listen well,
Mhm.
right? And then in turn, that will allow those individuals to meet the needs of the residents, or fellow team workers as they come
Mhm.
along. So it's really about seeing the other first, forgetting self, right? And looking at the other person through that lens of compassion and true willingness to hear
Mhm.
what they're saying.
I love how we framed this in the description. Applied daily resident interactions, from
Mhm.
service requests to difficult conversations. And boy, do we have a lot of those. And so, and inside, internally and externally, right? So this is a good framework. Now, do you guys see why this is a great enhancement or addition to other training that we've had? Module number 3, and I'll go through these quickly. What service actually looks like. Servant leadership model after Jesus and applied to how managers relate to residents, team members, and vendor partners in a practical term. Stephanie, can you speak to that? And the first thing that came to my mind and why I asked you to talk about this is the additional materials with the Maxwell books and how it so perfectly ties in, like high road leadership and just the people component of it. Can you speak to that for a bit?
Sure. And probably my answer is going to be more overarching for all of these modules. And then if
Sure.
Teresa wants to fill in the gaps. So, as I
Sure.
mentioned, we leveraged our task force to really answer the question, what are the gaps? How do the gaps align with the vision of Community Growth Foundation to provide faith-based education that is needed in our industry? So as you look at these different topics, this was really the framework that we created and then further refined. So we took our framework, what is needed, where do we want to focus, and then we said, okay, what things actually happen in multifamily on a daily, weekly, monthly, ongoing basis that are moments of truth, meaning moments that we interact quite a bit, either with our residents, our team members, our clients, or all of the above. What are those moments of truth that can make or break a relationship with a resident, a client, a prospect, etc.? And then what happens the majority of the time or often where we want to make sure people understand how to handle it, why it's important to handle it, and how to handle some of those challenging scenarios through the lens of faith, right? What would Jesus do? Or, as John Maxwell says, do what Jesus did. So we have little bracelets that are slightly different. Instead of what would Jesus do what Jesus did. So
Yeah.
the books that we ended up landing on, the approved curriculum and required reading for this course, we had to jump through a lot of hoops. So you mentioned High Road Leadership a couple of times. That was one of my recommended books. It's not actually part of the required curriculum because telling a little bit, probably too much about how the sausage is made. But when we select a text, we then have to make sure the university has it available and that it's available through their preferred provider so that the students can access it in the way that they need to access it. So all of that being said, the 4 that we landed on are the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership by John C. Maxwell, The Speed of Trust by and the subtitle is The One Thing That Changes Everything. I couldn't agree more, by Stephen M.R. Covey. Servant Leadership in Action, How You Can Achieve Great Relationships and Results, by Ken Blanchard and Renee Broadwell. And last but not least, the Bible as the foundational framework for faith-inspired leadership, stewardship, character, service, and ethical decision-making. Now, I'll tell a quick little story there. So one of the required texts that I had recommended early on is the Maxwell Leadership Bible. And the reason being, now, John has actually been asked the question by people who maybe didn't start out in faith, did you write the Bible? No, I didn't write the Bible, but very cute. The Maxwell Leadership Bible, John actually takes the Bible, and there are over 600 leadership lessons in the Bible that he annotates and points out. So we had hoped to include that, but that is actually not available through this system. So we landed on the good old Bible, right? But those are our 4 chosen textbooks, and we're thrilled about it because we think they're really going to give the students not only match the foundational principles that we've designed, but many have real life stories, examples that will help solidify why it's important, right, to lead through that lens. So thank you for asking. And certainly if Teresa has any other specifics to share, she can jump in.
Thank you so much for going through that text list. And that goes back to like that collaboration between higher ed, academics, how to properly source things. Like all of these details were carefully thought out and crafted to ensure you had proper access to the materials. I'm excited about it. And one of the things I think I'm most excited about is adding to my leadership library, if you will. My mentor and our friend, Dr. Debbie Phillips, she encourages all of us with books, right? So I literally have like a whole section of my personal library that dedicated to these books. And so now to add to that and literally walk through it collectively with our class participants is exciting for me. One of the things I want to touch on before we wrap up is the learning environment for this course. We already talked about executive case and significance, but I want to talk about the asynchronous environment. So it is asynchronous, which means that it's self-paced. It is online, completely online. And so it's designed to where it fits even into your busy lifestyle, whether it's after work, on your own time to work through it. But that does not mean it's lacking intentionality and engagement. Okay. So, one of the things we were really careful to do was include case studies, discussion prompts, real life examples pulled from our leaders. Even and you see that in the ethics module that we shared when we were on with Suzanne Pratt. We talked about the ethics module, which is one of my favorite, and the contributors did videos. We have video content, so you can really feel like you're having the conversation with our leaders. Also, some polls and some collaboration with other students in the class. So don't feel like you're doing this alone or in isolation. You will absolutely go through this with the modality of collaboration, through group work, through thought assessment, and it has that rigor. It's attached to a university, so we had to be very mindful of checking off all the components that it need to have for a university level certification program.
Well,
Um,
Melissa, can I jump in here for just a
Please,
moment?
yes,
Because I know we've mentioned this on our other segments, but you are actually the professor, the instructor for this. And
I am.
so we're thrilled. Thank you for saying yes.
Man,
And so I'd love for you to share again on this episode a little bit more. Um, Number one, about why you said yes to
mhm.
being the professor, and number two, why you're particularly excited about um, teaching this.
Thank you. I appreciate that acknowledgement and an honor to accept the role as instructor for this course. For me, it is honestly a divine appointment. Much like Teresa said, it was just significant at this season of my life. I was at a crossroads, and I live at the intersection of faith and corporate and community and all the work I do. And it was honestly timing. It was the timing of one chapter ending, and some parts of entrepreneurship is saying, well, God, what's next? And I definitely, when he closes a door, it says he'll open the windows of heaven. And clearly it was like, this was a divine moment. I said yes because I knew this was not an invitation to a job or a career. It was an assignment for a calling. That was my yes.
Mm.
Love that so
I said
much.
yes for the assignment. I said yes because of the legacy of what we're building. Like, literally every time we were on our Zoom calls and our meetings, I looked at every leader, every contributor, every subject matter expert, and I'm in awe. I'm like, wow, God, I get to build legacy with leaders I've looked up to my entire career. Who would say no to that? Um, and then lastly, oh my gosh, Stephanie, I'm like you. I feel the goosebumps. I feel when I'm about with what I'm about to say. If you know Stephanie, you know what that means. Like when she feels, she's like, "Oh, I feel it." Right? If we were in church, it would be like, "Oh, I feel the spirit." But
Yeah.
Grand Canyon University, right? I've always been a firm believer in higher education. We are all educators and experts on this line. And so we all have believe in investing in it. We've invested a great deal personally, each one of us in our own education. And I was like, this is just like God to align me with an institution and an opportunity where I can be all the things that I've been in my career. The executive, I can be the coach, I can be the multifamily expert, but I can be a believer and
Mm.
not hide any of those,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. It's like I get to talk about his word. I get to talk about the life and leadership of Jesus Christ in an academic setting with real life application. That's a gift. And so
Yeah.
I want to thank Grand Canyon University. I want to thank our leadership team, and just for the mission. Like, one thing that I learned too, as I'm preparing for the launch of this class, I keep using the word rigor, but I'm telling you, as a private Christian institution, there is an exceptional amount of training and development into the instructors to ensure we're prepared to create the right environment for the students that's mission driven and through the lens of a worldwide perspective of Christianity. It's not a one-sided lens. It's not just an Americanized or Western view. It's a global view of Christianity. We are charged with really helping the students, regardless of your faith belief, see the Bible as a educational tool and document on how to live life with others. And so I'm really glad that they have that culture. And I just thought it was a perfect fit. I couldn't have thought of a more perfect fit for Community Growth Foundation on where to roll this out because of the mission and the culture of Grand Canyon University. So again, I'm excited that I get to serve multiple universities in this season of my life. I love the work I do with every institution, but I'm exceptionally thankful, Grand Canyon, for the work you do and the mission. I get to be a Lope. Go Lopes.
Amen.
Nice.
Yeah. I feel like the way that you and I have talked about this extensively, but the timing and
The
how all of this
timing.
came about in
Yeah.
how I was reached out to and how that unfolded. And then, when I reached out
Yeah.
to you and it was perfectly aligned with some other work you were doing. And when I reached out to Teresa, just there's so many stories and again, it couldn't be anything but divine alignment,
It
right? And
was.
so we answered the call. When I thought of people in my mind, obviously that didn't just come from me, but that came from a divine sort of vision and, telling me who to reach out to and why. Anyway, I'm so thrilled that you
Yes.
are the professor on this because we have a unique opportunity for you to really give us, Teresa, myself, Cynthiann, who
Yes.
wasn't able to be here with us today, who,
Mhm.
we were the three subject matter experts,
Yes.
to really be able to give us actionable feedback. So as we move forward and launch this beyond the pilot, we can keep it evergreen and take that feedback from your lens and the students. So thank you. And then Teresa, I do just want to thank you
Yes.
again for saying yes to not only being on the task force, but when then I had the additional ask for you and Cynthiann to take on, being subject matter experts alongside me. It was heavy lifting and a labor of love. And so I really just want to extend my sincerest gratitude for saying yes, because you did say yes, and because Cynthiann said yes. As Melissa mentioned, we are, have created this end product that I'm super proud of. And to hear Melissa say, wow, this, I'm impressed so far is huge. So again, done is better than perfect. Perfectionism is not our goal. That's coming from a
Yeah.
recovering perfectionist, but quality is our goal. And we
Yeah,
will continue to refine it as needed. So thank you both
absolutely.
very, very much.
You got it. And thank you for saying that. Lastly, as we end our conversation today, you asked me one of the reasons why I say yes to being an instructor. And I'm glad I get to say this while Teresa is here. For me, I say this with a great deal of reverence. I wanted to ensure that all of the work put into the curriculum, what you did, Teresa, what Cynthia did, that like I can't imagine the amount of countless hours and thought and detail. Like I saw how you combed through that material and I said, wow, I want to ensure it's presented in the right light, that we do justice to the work that's done. And so I'm honored. A part of me is trembling like this has to be right, but that's the recovering perfectionist part. But just thank you for trusting me to deliver what you created. And I gotta tell you, for our inaugural class, you guys are in for a treat. And I love how Dave and John put it the other day. They are creating history by going through this program, and they will be the carriers of this material into their companies and into our industry. So if you are
Absolutely.
watching this, this is our call to action here. I know you're counting down to apartmentalize, but before you pack that bag and head to New Orleans, go ahead and click the link to apply. Very short process. It just takes you through what the course is about. It's going to ask you just a few questions. It gives you some information of how to take this to your company to participate as well. If you are a leader and you're hearing this, much like Teresa said, you want to sponsor someone, to be a benefactor to an industry leader, sow into them. It's good stewardship. So into another leader who wants to participate in this education. So again, our call to action here, click that link. We put it in all of the platforms. And thank you, Stephanie. I see that you shared it as well. Community
I
growth.
do want to also make another plug real quick because you mentioned Apartmentalize. Okay.
Yeah.
So I will be at
Oh, yes. Thank
Apartmentalize
you. Yeah.
June 15th through the 20th. I get in early for some committee meetings. So if you are going to be there, find me. I have a session along with Cynthiann, but I will also be at the Apartment Life Breakfast on Thursday morning, the 18th. And we're going to talk about this briefly at the Apartment Life Breakfast. So come find me if you want to hear more about it. And we will also be making a special appearance at the Apartment Life booth because Pete Kelly, who is the CEO of Apartment Life, he is on our task force, and he's also on the Community Growth Foundation board. And so Pete and his team have graciously allowed us to, to have a short moment for anyone who has questions for us about this incredible program. So thank you, Melissa.
Yes. Shout out to Apartment Life for your partnership and all that you do at our communities for this mission. So, guys, if you are watching this and it made an impact, share it. Share this live. Go follow each one of us on social media. Encourage your team to register. Teresa, thank you. Thank you for your time, for your leadership, and for your knowledge today. We know that it's going to impact more people to register and participate. Thank you.
It is my honor to be here.
Yes.
And we are blessed to have you as our instructor. I just want to throw that in.
Thank
Yes,
you.
we are.
Thank you. Well, listen, guys, stay locked in. We have 2 more interview sessions as we kick off the launch. Let me just share with you as we close out, final announcement here, that our course deadline for registration is the 15th. Don't let that stop you. Go ahead and get those applications in for this college certified, credentialed certification program. Class kicks off June 22nd. So what a great way to spend your summer, getting that continuing education. All right. And then also just reminding you that here are some of the core courses that we're going over: building communities that hold together, leadership philosophy, ethics, all exceptionally good content. I'll see you on our next live on Wednesday, 12 p.m. Eastern, as we continue the conversation. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you, everyone.